I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to our series, Pagan Problems. This week we're going to tackle the subject of creating a magical household and the challenge that this entails. So, where to begin? That is always the question. Whether you're at the very beginning and you're wanting to make your household a magical place to live and practice, or if you've been at this a while and you're just wanting to up your game, spruce things up, it can be very difficult to find a starting point. And the scale of your home and how many people live in your household, how many pets, this can also complicate the process. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by the idea, rest assured you have plenty of company, and that making your home magical is a process, not an event. So you don't have to have a quick band-aid, whirlwind event. It's something that you can do and incorporate over time. It's also something that will change and evolve with you and your domestic circumstances throughout the years. We have different needs at different stages of our lives. And also, the most practical and mundane aspects of housekeeping do have the power to affect the energy in our homes. And this can either support or detract from our spiritual practices. So, deep breath. Let's tackle this challenge together. So to start with, as per usual, we've got to peer into the looking glass and just have a moment of complete honesty with ourselves. How do we actually feel about running a household in general? Are our feelings about it favorable, unfavorable, indifferent? Or are you stressed out by the mere thought of having to deal with it? It's important to be honest, even say the words out loud if you need to, because the attitude we take into this is going to color everything. How we do the work, how we go through things, and honestly, and we have to be honest about this aspect of it, there are certain very loud voices in society that consider housework of any kind to just be beneath everyone's dignity, but particularly beneath the dignity of women. And this horrible thing to be, to get through and then before you move on to loftier things. We have to square with that. We have to square with how much that attitude has actually affected our own feelings. We're not talking, yes, sometimes the chores around the house aren't, the most glamorous, exciting thing, but think about what they accomplish, what they achieve. No, it's not pleasant to do things like scrubbing down the toilet or cleaning out a drain or any of that other stuff, but the results are the reason why we do these things. The results are worthwhile in and of themselves. So we do need to have some reflection about, are we perhaps overemphasizing the difficulties in our minds and underemphasizing the good results once the work is done. Now, from a strictly mundane perspective, what aspects of your household currently run very smoothly and which don't? It may be useful to write down a list of things and consider if basic chores like cleaning, laundry, if these things get done regularly and in a reasonable fashion without too much uproar. When it comes to cooking, do you find it relatively easy to make sure that you have the staples on hand? Or do you find yourself having to frequently run to the store to get ingredients whenever you want to cook? Or do you often find yourself throwing your hands in the air and ordering out or running through a drive-thru because you just don't want to deal with the hassle at all? Also think about schedules. This is particularly relevant for households with children. There's bound to be a lot of comings and goings. So write down the general flow of what happens on an average day, and it will soon become apparent what is actually working for you, what needs to be changed if possible, and what absolutely has to change for the sake of sanity. And never forget, we are sometimes blinded by, the role that our home really plays in our lives, but do not underestimate how things at home can affect every single aspect of our lives. It has tentacles and it goes and everywhere and affects everything. Now, once you've done that, think about how you actually conduct your spiritual and magical practice. What about it makes you feel truly happy and fulfilled and as though you're learning something valuable and something that means something to you in your existence? What things do you feel that you're not really getting anything out of it? In what ways do you want to grow? Also list what practical things kind of get in the way of your practices. Is it an issue of not having your own space? Is it an issue with time? Is it an issue with people not understanding that when you're at ritual and in your circle that you are doing things and that's not the time to interrupt you? Whatever the case may be, Write it down. We can't begin to address the problems and challenges that we face if we are not first identifying what they are. Now, the way we practice and where the focus of our practice is going to be very heavily influenced by what's going on in our lives. Rather than resent our limitations, try to focus on what's possible and brainstorm on how to maximize that. And also, I think you'll find that if you really hone in your practices about things that meet your daily needs, such as if you are a parent with small children, well, they're going to have all the usual small children issues. They're going to be running around, breaking things, scraping their knees, getting colds, struggling with school, all this and that. If you focus your magic on attending to those needs, not only will you be learning a great deal, but you will be using it on a regular basis. That practice will make you better at what you do, and it will actually be bringing a benefit to everyone around you. Now, if you're in your 70s and you're in a much more contemplative point of your life, maybe you need to be focusing your magical practice on what you can leave behind. For those who are coming up behind you, what is your legacy as a magical practitioner? This might be the time to write that novel or tackle certain things because you have some experience, you have some wisdom, you have something to impart to others. Now, if you're a teenager and you're just starting to explore your spiritual possibilities, this would be the time to research and expose yourself to ideas. Look what those ideas look like in practice. Examine, and not just Wicca or paganism, but every religion that kind of strikes your fancy. Examine it really inside and out. Delve into the histories. Look at what the people who practice it have to say for themselves, and look at the substance of the ideas. Do people seem to be living in accordance with those ideas or not? Is it about sincerity, or is it about appearances? And just kind of turn it all over in your mind. This is what your brain is meant to do at that age. And if you start getting the habit of getting into the philosophical underpinnings of things at a very young age, it will serve you later on in life. And not just in your spirituality, in every aspect of your life. If you can get down to the foundations of something, you will be amazed how much easier it is to navigate things. Now, moving on. Once you have the lay of the land, then it's time to roll up your sleeves and to just get cracking. Break the project down into chunks, and don't be afraid to spread the initial work over, say, a week's time or even a month's time if you live in a large home or you have a large family. And of course, if you have very sharply defined time constraints, you're going to have to work within those. No one is expecting miracles here, and if you turn this process into a nightmare, well, you're very unlikely to maintain any kind of household routine after that, so be sensible. But stage 1, sort through your possessions. William Morris says, have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. I find that a very, very good guide for what I have in my home. And once you know what you intend to keep, then the remainder can be divided between what you can donate and what you need to throw away. Don't be afraid to give your home the Marie Kondo treatment and ask the all-important question of whether or not a possession sparks joy. Now, obviously, it goes without saying to do this only with your possessions, but you can encourage other members of the household to do the same with theirs. And, of course, negotiate and compromise with your spouse over jointly owned property. Do not create a domestic incident for yourself. And also, this isn't about minimalism. It isn't about any particular design aesthetic. This is about what is actually handy-dandy for you to have around. What do you use regularly? What do you think is beautiful and that you actually enjoy seeing? It's that sort of thing, not having to convert to the quasi-religion of minimalism. But that's it for stage 1. Stage 2, deep clean. Getting rid of the cobwebs, the dust, neglected areas. These things are all physical manifestations of stagnant energy. So the best thing we can do is whisk that away. The expression, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. These are not just pretty words that we mean in ritual. It's an acknowledgement that the material and the spiritual realms are intertwined, and they affect one another. So when we physically clean the space, that also helps cleanse the energy of the space, even more so if we do the cleaning with conscious intention. And this is where you will find that visualization is very helpful in the process. And the more thorough we are with this, the bigger the reward, the fresher the house will feel, and the magical energies will be able to flow freely. And that's what you want. You need to have that nice, natural flow through the home. Think of it as airflow, or the flow of the natural light through the house. Think of it in those terms, and that might help to give you something to anchor your thinking on, and whether or not things are moving along as they should within your home. Now, stage 3, organization. Now, organization does not have to be overbearing. If the tail is wagging the dog, then it defeats the purpose. And I want to highlight this because in the case of my mother, I do feel like she saw organization as the end in and of itself rather than a tool to accomplish other projects. And it did seem like it was running her life instead of her running her life through her organizational processes. And I saw what that did to her. My mother was always inclined towards neuroticism a little bit. She's actually one of the reasons why I was slovenly in my domestic habits for so many years. It was a knee-jerk reaction to her over-attention to detail. And it wasn't until I was able to get some space from that and realize, I don't really like being disorderly. I don't really like, not remembering the last time when I dusted was. I like to have things, in a reasonable fashion. I had to get past that psychological hurdle. I mean, maybe you're struggling with something similar. Maybe you had a parent who wasn't, hyper-organized, but hyper-unorganized, and now you're trying to come away from that and get to a place that's actually balanced, that's actually serving your life, as opposed to being a reaction to the traps that other people found themselves in. Now, there is value in having a place for everything and putting everything in its place, at least within reason. To start with, you can put like items with like, and make sure that those items are in a place that actually makes sense. For instance, the toothpaste does not belong in the living room. Screwdriver shouldn't be kept in the bathroom. Husband of mine, if you happen to watch this video, I am looking at you. You've made great progress, my darling, but still, from time to time, I do find tools in the bathroom basket. Moving along. This isn't about my domestic issues, but you put things where they make sense. You don't keep your favorite pair of shoes in the garage. You don't put things where they don't belong. Now, once you do have things in the right room, you can consider how to make those items that are most frequently used to be also the most easily accessible, and then you go from there with the less frequently items used in a little bit more out-of-the-way places. Still accessible, but not to where you're constantly having to access it. Oftentimes, the most sensible location will become obvious in this process, and also don't be afraid to take a tea and snack break from time to time as you go through. You're going to need to keep up your strength through this. And then that brings us to stage 4, which is the decoration phase. And I think it is probably the most enjoyable portion of the practical process of getting your magical household in order. Now, of course, we don't have to have every pretty thing we happen to own all out on display at the same time. This is especially true when it comes to seasonal decorations. Start with your favorites and the things you like to have around you just in general, then add in your seasonal touches if desired, and when it feels like enough, and I feel like there is a moment when every room says, you're done, then let it be done. Don't be afraid to put remaining items away in a storage tote or in a box, and set it aside until you feel the urge to freshen up the visual look of your home. It's okay to do this. It's not the end of the world, I promise. Once this is done, take a moment to meditate at your altar, or at least at your favorite spot of the home, and just feel the ebb and the flow of the energy. Make a note if you sense that any areas feel bottlenecked, and be sure to address them and go through that process until it feels like things are flowing as they should be. This could take some time, but don't be afraid of that. It will, you can get it figured out. It's just going to take, multiple attempts. Nothing wrong with that. Now, if you have a workroom or a permanent altar where you practice, take special care that everything is arranged in such a way that it's functional, in the sense that, when you are performing your rituals or at your spell work, you have what you need where you need it, and you're able to move in a cohesive fashion, but also to where it is visually pleasing. It should be that nice balance. This may also take a few tries, so don't feel discouraged if this part takes a while. After this, make a list of areas in your home that feel insufficiently magical to you, and then rank these areas in accordance with your priorities. Now, this is where we get into having a magical routine, establishing one, and also looking for opportunities to make spaces magical. As previously discussed, creating your magical household should revolve around you and your family and the realistic demands of your life. And by the time you get to this point of the process, you should have a more concrete idea of what general kind of routine your household actually requires in order to function. You do not have to overschedule yourself. Doing that would just turn your magical efforts into another chore to just cross off the old to-do list. That's not really going to be the most productive spirit with which to do our work. But if you gradually add magical components to your usual ordinary activities, that can be a more practical approach. It's something you can do gradually, and it's not going to be this big, overwhelming new thing that you've imposed upon yourself. Now, generally speaking, I know there'll be people out there who disagree, but, well, until you can throw rotten tomatoes through the computer screen, I guess I don't have to worry too much, but generally speaking, cleaning the house, this is a task that can be accomplished about once a week for most people. Now, in addition to visualizing as you're wiping and sweeping away any stagnant energy, it's also an opportunity to smudge the house with, say, sage or bay leaves, dragon's blood incense, anything that's purifying, and then you can waft the energy it collects out the door. And if you keep to that routine, then your home is going to be fresh both physically and spiritually. This sets up a pleasant atmosphere for the household in general and your magical practice in particular, because this is all about making it easier for you to do your work as a practitioner. Now, every area of the home has potential to be a magical space, even if it's not where you conduct the bulk of your rituals and spells. So make a list of each room in the house, any outdoor space you might have, outbuildings, if you are living in a more rural area, this could be a barn or it could be a shed. Just whatever you have, make a list of it. And then also include in each area which members of the household might view that area as being their personal domain and which areas are shared spaces. Also includes pets in this. The room where, this is where they have their food bowl. This is where the cat's litter box is. This is where we store, their toys or their leashes or their carrying cages or whatever else. Just write it all down. And if you are in a rural area, you're on a farm, don't forget your livestock. Include them in this list everywhere. Make sure you can see essentially where everything does most of its living. After this, jot down a few keywords that describe the function of the space, what it needs, and how magic could enhance it. Now, many areas, especially entryways, say doors and windows, and any area where you keep animals, a chicken coop, for example, these are places that can really benefit from protection magic. There's a variety of options you can use to protect the home, but among the most common is to line doorways and windowsills with salt. And this helps seal the energy of the house, and it protects the occupants from harm. Obviously, you would want to do this after you do an energy cleansing. But it's simple, it's inexpensive, and I would suggest refreshing this about, once a month or so. It's also prudent to periodically cleanse mirrors, TVs, tablets, cell phones, anything that has a reflective surface, especially if it's also a means of connecting us with the rest of the world. Mirrors and our tech devices, these are portals of energy as well as ideas. So you need to actively decide what's going to come through these portals and what is going to be blocked. Just as you would lock your door, make sure that your mirrors and your tech aren't wide open to any and everything. You don't necessarily want all the energy that's out in the world infecting your household. Now, this brings us to the issue of individual rooms. They're going to have very specific needs and functions. Your bedroom, if you're an adult, it needs to serve the dual purposes of rest and romance. And there are a lot of things you can do magically to deal with insomnia issues, nightmares, or just a general lack of restful sleep. Meditation, herbal sachets, crystals, these are very popular options. Magic can also help the room be more conducive for romantic encounters. And this can be done without infringing on someone else's free will. Sometimes just amping up the energy and lighting a few candles, setting the mood, that can be enough. Now, when it comes to children's bedrooms, obviously they have different needs. It's true, it is a place for the kids to sleep, but the kids' bedroom, particularly if they have a bedroom to themselves, it can be a world unto itself. I know that's how it was when I was growing up and my brother was growing up. They have their toys, their schoolwork, art projects, books, little bits and bobs they've collected from goodness knows where. But this is also the space where they dream and they grow and they explore. So this room requires flexibility of function and flexibility of energies because it's going to be serving different purposes throughout the day. So if you were to incorporate charms that focus very nurturing energy, that would be especially appropriate for children's rooms because you don't want to necessarily, have something that's all about sleep aids. I mean, yes, you'll want to bring those in when it's time for the kid to sleep, but, if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they need to be playing and run around, you don't want to be having a magical energy that's tamping down their energy. You need to let them flow naturally. Now, dining rooms and living rooms. This is one of the areas that would benefit from any form of magic that encourages good communication. One of the reasons why some, and possibly many, families struggle with their relationships and struggle with feeling connected, and why communication in general is problematic, is because there is a lack of regular, just commonplace interaction. People forget sometimes how to be with one another. Oftentimes conflicting schedules is a source of this, but too much screen time is a contributing factor, as is not making a point to be actively interested in your family members, and also coming together to participate in activities as a group. How can you be a strong family if you aren't actually interacting with one another, if you aren't interested, if you don't know each other? This is something that is kind of a more of a modern problem, because as we get more and more technologically advanced, well, it gets easier and easier to ignore the existence of other humans. This is not a good thing. I think it's one of the reasons why we see such an uptick in mental illness, such an uptick of people struggling with very serious forms of depression and loneliness and feeling unconnected, because as connected as you might be through all of your various devices, those devices are not giving you what you need to get from human relationships. And you're only going to have human relationships if you actually spend time with each other, if you actually have history together. It's something to think about. So these common areas of the home, the dining room, living rooms, family rooms, whatever you happen to have, this is an ideal environment in which you can decide to form healthier habits, and to do so in a very natural and relaxed way. If it's stiff and formal, it's going to come across as insincere and it's not going to go anywhere. But if you set the mood and set the atmosphere with a few magical touches, you'll be well on your way to at least improving things. Now, kitchens. With the exception of a dedicated altar room, kitchens are the most magically active space in the house for a lot of practitioners. Everything we eat and drink, it's composed of ingredients that have magical properties. And we always have the option to actively draw upon those energies if we're needing an extra dose, if we want to attract luck, prosperity, promote health, and a variety of intentions can be used. You get the idea. This isn't something that's restricted to, dedicated kitchen witches. We all consume food, and the vast majority of us have at least rudimentary cooking skills. So we might as well bring our magical capabilities to the table, in this case quite literally. Then, bathrooms and laundry rooms. These are sometimes overlooked as potential magical spaces. But both are ideal for cleansing work, especially when it comes to dealing with work clothes. At my last job, I noticed that all of my work clothes, even after they were laundered, they still retained the energy from the job itself, and I absolutely loathed that job. So I was literally wearing the accumulated baneful energy and every frustration, every time I was angry, everything that wasn't any good about that job, it was just stacked on me, and this happened every time I put on my work clothes and went to work. So I was not exactly setting myself up for success or for improved patterns there. However, once I realized this and I finally connected the dots, I then got into the habit of passing my work clothes through incense smoke, and over time that gradually reduced the buildup of those unwanted energies. It wasn't an absolute solution, but it did help somewhat. Now, in the bathroom, whether you're taking a shower or a bath, that can cleanse you spiritually as well as physically. And taking a nice, long, soaking bath, that's also an opportunity for meditation. Just make sure you don't fall asleep in the process. Then offices, they must be suitable for work, especially with, in recent years, more and more people working from home. Now, ideally, you should be able to feel a change of atmosphere between your home office and the rest of the house. It should be quite different. And one discreet way to use magical energies when you're creating a suitable workspace is through houseplants. You can use air purifier plants such as peace lily, dracena, English ivy, mother-in-law's tongue, Erica palm. This will help keep the air fresh, and that also has the benefit of keeping the mind sharp. And you want to be able to have that when you're conducting business and doing work. But also, incense candles, essential oils scented with cinnamon, are excellent for any area in which you're conducting business. They promote success, good fortune, everything that you're wanting in order to have a good working day. But also, take into consideration what colors you decide to use in the space. Now, a home office, usually you have more options about how to do it up than what would be available to you in a traditional office setting. So make the most of that advantage. Now, of course, it should still be professional, especially if you're doing a lot of Zoom calls. But this is still an opportunity for you to make it a very stimulating environment, and using color, so whether it's paint or accessories, and you using them that colors that are really stimulating to you, that make you feel really active and energized and enthused. That can set the mood, and it's easy enough to do. No matter what color of drapes you get, no matter what color paint you put on the wall, it all generally costs about the same. So this is a relatively inexpensive means to add magical touches to your office that are also discreet. Let's say yellow really gets you going. You paint the wall behind you yellow. No one, if you're talking to someone on a professional conference through Zoom, they'll certainly notice your wall color, but they're not going to know that you used yellow for its extroverted qualities, for its, sunny optimism, for its ability to spur you on to work and getting all of that sunny energy. They won't know that, but you will. So it's something to keep in mind, especially if you're still in the broom closet. You can do things that won't out you, but are still very effective. Now, outdoor spaces. Of course, as we well know, if we've studied for any length of time, every plant has magical properties. So if you're starting your landscaping from scratch, you can choose an intention. Let's say you want to choose protective plants, and then you just choose plants accordingly. And a lot of things, especially if it's more flowering plants, they come in a variety of colors, so color coordination shouldn't be terribly difficult. And then you have a garden that is serving a magical function, as well as being very beautiful and having a little bit of curb appeal. Then we have more practical aspects of gardening, fruit, veg, herbal gardens. And whether you're growing these for use at the table or for use at your altar, I think it's just prudent in general to do a bit of practical gardening if you have the space to do so, even if it's just a very humble pot of rosemary sitting on a windowsill. Just do what you can. That's all any of us can do. Just make the most of your circumstances and do what you can. Very few people are able to grow 100% of their own food. But what we can produce for ourselves, that enables us to be a bit more independent. And that can make us feel more secure, especially since the world is so topsy-turvy at the moment. Now, if you are able to raise livestock, say chickens, goats, sheep, cows, pigs, whatever it is, it's well worth going to the effort to bless their shelters, their food, their water source. We can't prevent all misfortune or all illness that might befall the animals, but we can use our magic to stack the odds in our favor. And if you do some research, you'll see how much magic in the olden days really was focused on household issues, agricultural issues, things that enabled people to survive and hopefully become prosperous. Now, for very neglected areas, as far as magic is concerned, garages, sheds, outbuildings, these are usually very functional spaces, and they may seem like they're unlikely candidates for magical workings. But doesn't it make sense to at least put protection on buildings of this kind? They do house valuable property, and they house things that are practical tools that enable us to run the home and run the garden in a more sensible and efficient manner. Another possibility to explore is perhaps charming our gardening tools so that they remain functional, so that they last a longer time, or to place wards on storage areas to deflect prying eyes and not to draw attention to itself. You could create witch bottles to repel thieves. That would be particularly important for protecting vehicles. There are things you can do even for areas that, don't exactly scream, this is a witchy space. Well, it doesn't have to be. It's still part of your home, part of your own personal kingdom. So, put a bit of your stuff on it. Now the aesthetics. And I just want to make it very clear from the get-go, no, you do not have to conform to a certain aesthetic to have witchy and magical space. Do not feel compelled to overhaul your entire sense of beauty and style because you see a certain image of witchiness on Pinterest or other social media platforms. That is not what is required of anyone. Magic can be practiced in any area of the world, in any environment, with any aesthetic. So whatever your favorite style is, whether it's rustic, modern, cottagey, glamorous, farmhouse, mid-century modern, Parisian chic, dark academia, Victorian, Art Deco, it doesn't make any difference. You can be a witch and work magic no matter what mode of lifestyle you have and no matter what aesthetic you find to be personally beautiful. Whatever your possessions you are that you have in your home, they can be put to magical use. It doesn't have to scream witch in order to be a suitable place for you to practice. Think about it. Think about all the practitioners who, through the years, even in relatively modern times, who were practicing on the down low and had all kinds of magical everything surrounding them, but people didn't know it. They didn't know it because it was blending in. So incorporate what you love. And if you have a patron deity, then you may get a few nudges here and there, for your altar or something that they think you need for your house. And of course, follow that advice if it's within your means to do so. But that doesn't mean that you have to suppress your own personality and preferences. It is your life. You are living in this day and age. You are in the place that you're at. Adapt accordingly. Now, we can also flow with the seasons. Neither paganism nor witchcraft is a static spirituality. Our gods don't stand still, nature doesn't stand still, and neither do we. If everything in our homes is absolutely the same all year round, the energy in the house will become stagnant. If nothing else, it will be a sign that you're stuck in a rut, and being stuck in a rut reduces energy flow, and that gets in the way of magic, and then you're suddenly not getting as much out of your practice. It doesn't have to be a big production to move in the flow of the seasons, and it does not require a complete overhaul of how the home is decorated, although I will admit I've been collecting a great many seasonal items over the years, and to the best of my ability, I do try to make every single area of the house just scream whatever season we're in, whatever Sabbat we're in. But that's me. You do not have to do what I do. And for a lot of people, that having that kind of immersive environment would just be way too much. They wouldn't want to deal with it visually. They wouldn't want to deal with the work of doing it. And no one has to. So think simple touches. Changing out a wreath on the door to represent the current season. Using scents, be it in candles or something as practical as a cleaning product, that are seasonably appropriate. And of course, refresh your altar and incorporate seasonal touches there. Even very subtle changes can still be refreshing. It can keep us in the energy of the season, and that helps everything in our lives flow. And then, of course, try to do a deep clean and just assess whether or not your current organization structure is really working for you in your home on, say, a quarterly basis. I like to do this at the very beginning of each season. And this prevents the need for a more strenuous yearly spring cleaning, and it prevents the buildup of clutter, and that prevents the buildup of stagnant energy. And that's something that's worked very well for me. But of course, not everyone is in a position to do that, so think about what's going to be practical for you. And of course, if you have a family and everyone's of an age to where they can actively help, do not be afraid to press them into service. If necessary, bribe them with cookies. Bribery can accomplish a great deal. So, this is just a few ideas to get us into the mindset, to start thinking about how we might apply some of these principles to creating our own personal magical households. And of course, what we've talked about today in this video, it barely scratches the surface. So think of this very much as a starting point. Now, I am a huge fan of books, as you well know if you've been following this channel. And so I just want to share a few with you that have helped me in my own witchy homemaking journey. Now to start with, we have Home Comforts, The Art and Science of Keeping House by Cheryl Mendelsohn. This is not a pagan book, but it is full of practical advice. I mean, look how nice and thick it is. It talks about the meaning of housework, its benefits, how we can improve our own attitude about it. She's the one who really turned me around, and she got me out of that pattern of being in a knee-jerk reaction of my own mother's completely insane way of running a house. So I can really testament she absolutely helped me. Oh, of course, this book and all the other books, no one's paying me to say anything about them. This is just what's helped me in my personal experience. But after the introduction about how her own journey about homemaking and housekeeping really began, she then goes on to tackle topics relating to food, taking care of cloth items, cleanliness in general, daily life routines, helping you sleep, safety, and legalities. This is really super practical. I think every household needs at least one nice sturdy manual about the how-tos and the whys and wherefores of keeping house, and this one I've yet to find anything that I like better, so very good book. Next we have The Magical Household Spells and Rituals for the Home by Scott Cunningham and David Harrington. There is a staggering amount of magical lore about the home in this book, and it's a pretty thin book, so it's a very quick read. And it begins with general house lore, and then subsequent chapters tackle the hearth, thresholds of power, furnishings, dreaming, stove and spoon, bathing and brush, the indoor garden, fur, fins, and feathers, the mystic garden, the garage, protection, bride, broom and rag, household purifications, moving, the magical year, house spells, household omens importance, and the household altar. It is the first book I ever bought about household magic, and I still use and reference it. Number 3, we have Magical Housekeeping, Simple Charms and Practical Tips for Creating a Harmonious House by Tess Whitehurst. This book is equal parts philosophy and practical application. She begins by addressing clutter clearing and then goes on to cleaning, space clearing, harmonious positions, the 3 secrets of empowerment, gemstones, fairies, angels, and other helpful beings, plant allies, animal allies, sacred smoke and aromas of power, blessings, protections, and other rituals. And she has a lot of very good recipes for homemade cleaning supplies. So if that's an interest to you, she might be a book you want to pick up. Next, we have The House Witch, Your Complete Guide to Creating a Magical Space with Rituals and Spells for Hearth and Home by Erin Murphy Hiscock. This underscores the importance of the witch's relationship to the home and how to function within it as both home and temple. It has 11 chapters, a place to call home, your home as a sacred space, your spiritual hearth, the magic of the cauldron, hearth and home deities, the kitchen as a sacred space using hearthcraft to protect your home, magic at the hearth, the spirituality of food, herbs, crafts, and other heart-related magic work and spells and rituals. Not a big book, lots of good info. Now we have Sacred Space, Clearing and Enhancing the Energy of Your Home by Denise Lynn. She goes pretty in-depth with the spiritual aspects of making a place sacred, and if you do your rituals and your spells from home, this is well worth a read. The topics include home as being, my journey, the 4 steps to house clearing, purifying fire, holy water, the alchemy of air, healing earth, sacred sound, mystic symbols for the home, moving into a new home, your house as metaphor, into the light, the art of placement, home protectors and energizers, ghost busting, circle of life method, interior realignment systems, creating sacred space in your office, and transmitting the light. So if you are needing to, if you feel like you've pretty well got the practical aspects of everything down and you're looking for a more spiritual approach, this would be your book. Then we have Cottage, Witchery, Natural Magic for Hearth and Home by Ellen Dugan. Ellen Dugan has a very relaxed, very naturalized approach to magic just generally. So if you're not big on structure, but you still want your home to be magical, this is an author well worth checking out. She begins the book with a witchy welcome and then does natural magic all around the home, kitchen cupboard conjuring, deities, fairies, and magic of the hearth flame, seasonal, natural, and decorations for the magical home, outdoor rooms and magic of houseplants, protection for the home, prosperity for the home, happiness, and harmony for the home. So, very good book there. Now we're getting into our more kitchen crafty books, and because so much of our household magic, the kitchen is kind of the heart of the home, even in this day and age, I thought it was worth bringing up 3 that were quite specific to it. First, we've got a beginner's book. It's called Wicca, Kitchen Witchery, A Beginner's Guide to Magical Cooking with Simple Spells and Recipes by Lisa Chamberlain. This really demystifies kitchen craft, and hopefully anyone who reads this book won't feel intimidated anymore by working a little bit of magic in the kitchen. First, she begins with defining what kitchen witchery actually consists of. Then she describes the witch's kitchen, kind of the ideal setup. And then she concludes the book with a kitchen grimoire. There are lots of recipes worth trying in this book, and it's not terribly expensive either, so good initial investment if you happen to be a beginner. Now we have my personal favorite, the Book of Kitchen Witchery, Spells, Recipes, Rituals for Magical Meals, An Enchanted Garden, and a Happy Home by Caradine Greenleaf. This book is an absolute delight to the eyes. I love the style of the illustrations, but the content is also very grounded. It's very practical, and there's a sense of joy in her writing style that's really pretty inspirational. Now the chapters are The Charmed Life, The Kitchen Altar, Tools of the Trade, Succulent Spells for Magical Meals, Brewing Up Blessings, Kitchen Cupboard Cures, The Kitchen Witch's Garden, Cooking Up Lots of Love, Celebrating the Wheel of the Year, and then Journaling Your Spellcraft. Now the last one I'm going to bring to your attention is The Wicca Cookbook, Recipes, Rituals, and Galore by Jamie Wood and Tara Seafeld. If you've ever struggled with creating a menu for any of the sabbats, this book might be the answer. After the introduction and a few preliminaries, the book is divided by sabbat. So we've got Amal, Kastara, Beltane, Letha, Lunasa, Mabon, Samhain, and Yule. And there's a bonus chapter at the end about kitchen witchery with kids. So you've got a general idea about how to approach making your household more magical. You've got some reference material you can check out if you're needing some additional guidance or you want some ideas about getting a little bit further into specific magics for the home. So I hope this very long video has been helpful to you. It's been inspirational. If you haven't visited us already at Blackbird's Brew on Discord, we'd love to have you there. We have a brand new channel called The Pagan Housewife, where we share a lot of household lore, magical tips. It ranges from the aesthetic to the very, very practical. And sometimes it even verges a little into the philosophical. So if you're looking for a little bit of support as you get your own self in order, well, we have a prepared place for you. There is an invitation link in the description box below. Just click it and you'll be able to join. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave a comment should the spirit move you. But that is definitely it for now. I'll see you in another video. Bye.